Alright, this is a story about Measure R. More specifically, the Measure R of Isla Vista, California, a college town where the median residence age is less than 21. Nothing really makes this particular Measure R special. Not the competing interests, nor the extremists, nor the fact that every resident gets to vote on it. Okay, so, competing interests. Going to class, the advertising on campus would make you think Measure R was a savior of the student body. R stood for rights, resources, and representation, and it was a way for the underprivileged students of Isla Vista to finally take ownership and responsibility for their community. The moment you stepped off campus, you were led to believe that Measure R was an evil, unnecessary bloating of government, which only existed to stroke the egos of those pretentious student body government representatives. R stood for raised rent, and if you had any common sense or self-preservation, you'd vote against it. I think the first panel of this Facebook meme sums it up. We have Isla Vista residents squaring off against their landlords. And, come election day, guess what? Measure R passes. We now pay an 8% utility tax to fund local IV government. Great. The students won, the landlords lost. The end. JK, there's more. The landlords weren't the only losers. No, you know what also lost? Democracy. Or, more specifically, one of the pillars of democracy. Voting. Voter turnout was terrible. Guess how many people voted? I would have guessed 50%. You may think my vote is way off, but I figured that if you walk into a random college lecture, about half the students bothered to show up. And I figured that if a student can be bothered to show up to lecture, they can be bothered to go vote. But no, it wasn't 50%. What about 25? I guess this would make more sense, since of the people that go to class, half of them aren't even paying attention. So you think that for every person that goes to lecture for the sake of learning, there's a person who would go vote. But no, it wasn't 25%. How about 10? At 10%, we're talking A- students. We're talking 3.7 and above GPAs. Smart people who value education. But not their vote, I guess, because it wasn't 10%. Let's try 5%. Yes, 5%. 1 in 20. We're talking A+ students. These students are at the top of their game. If they don't understand something the professor says, they raise their hand and ask a question, or read the book after class to make sure they have a complete, composed, and meditative grasp on this goddamn material. These people know integrity and dedication are the only things allowing them to keep a white-knuckled grip on what they consider acceptable, and any slip-up means time and work to make it back. The material learned in class is absorbed into their conscious minds, and additional material learned in this class or any other can be integrated and analyzed in ways that provide for thought-provoking conversation. You'd think that for every one of these exceptionally talented students, there would be someone who actually goes out and votes. But no. It wasn't even 5%. Measure R had the pleasure of being graced with a 4% voter turnout. 4. 1 in every 25 people. But it could be worse. I guess it would be real tragic if we Isla Vistians weren't so self-aware. Remember that Facebook meme? Well, in the second panel, we have UCSB students taking a fat rip, having a toke like there's no goddamn tomorrow. And you know what's ironic and maybe a little sad? This post on Facebook. The reactions. It got 313 reactions. 177 likes, 83 laughs, and 53 sads. 313. That number of extra votes would have put a significant chunk in this election. In fact, I crunched the numbers. I dug deep for you guys. Look at me on Facebook.com. Look at this goddamn scroll bar. Look how far back I had to go to find these posts. On the 42 posts I found about Measure R, there were 5,805 reactions. The measure itself saw under 1,500 votes. This means, for every one person that voted on Measure R, a Facebook meme about that measure got 4 reactions. And I personally think that's freaking crazy. You might agree. You might say, that's bonkers. You might think it's not. But at least let me explain why I think it's crazy. It's crazy because this is a story about young people. Millennials, if you will. Remember, the median resident of Isla Vista legally can't drink. Like that stops us. And this story enforces a stereotype. Young people don't vote. But guess what? Young people sure have opinions. Now, here at UCSB, we have Linguistics 135, a class about memes. and I haven't taken this class, so I can't claim to have my finger on the beating pulse of today's internet culture. Nevertheless, I know you don't have to go far to find political dissension and anger on the internet. And yes, there is a lot to complain about. The environment, inflation, decreasing value of college degrees, a shrinking middle class. I'm not here to take a stance on these complaints, just to show you that they're there. And yet, for such big complainers, we're not using the one thing the government gives us to make a difference. To vote. You might say, oh, come on, why would I vote? The whole election is already a gerrymandered mess where my vote is literally a grain of sand on a beach, and it's the super PACs and special interests that really control the waves that shape that beach. Also, my state's voted the same way the past 20 years. Okay, I get it. You vote and all you get is a little sticker and up to 2 hours off work. You make a fiery post on social media, and Mark Zuckerberg's billion-dollar algorithms work really hard to give you a hit of dopamine. But let me paint you a picture. Let's say the world comprises of beekeepers and metal welders, and politicians. Now, some politician makes a move that upsets all the beekeepers, but wins over the welders. Now the beekeepers make a bunch of memes about it, and the welders vote. Guess who's going to be in power? Welder-loving politicians. And they'll make campaign promises about how they're going to make the welders' lives so much better. And the beekeepers? Who cares about them? As long as a politician attracts the vote of the welders, they're good. Oh, but those are just campaign promises. Politicians don't keep those. Well, maybe. However, if they don't, the next election, other politicians will be like, former president promised better metal alloy imports and he did not deliver. I will. #change. And then that politician wins. So it's within a president's best interest to keep his voters happy. So if you're not a voter, you're screwed. Even if your vote doesn't tip the scales, it does show that you care. Of course, we live in a world with more than 2 types of people, but the idea is the same. If your type of people don't vote, their interests won't be weighed as heavily. So if you're young or in a minority group or in a group that is underrepresented vote-wise, it's important that you vote. In fact, any U.S. citizen over 18 who hasn't been convicted of a felony or deemed insane by a court should be voting. Oh, but you might say, I can't vote. To register, I need my ID, and my ID's in my wallet. My wallet's on the table, and I'm on the couch. And I don't want to get up. Lazy goddamn Americans. Okay, so people died, so land-owning white men could vote. And then, many more had to struggle so that they and their people and or gender could vote. There's history here. I mean, we freaking dumped tea into an ocean for this. Also, you could go to your nearest polling station. But today, thanks to Wi-Fi in the post office, you don't even need to leave your house. Okay, so in conclusion, it's voting season. You know, deep down, you should probably vote, even though it's a little inconvenient. Just like you know you should probably be exercising more and spending less money on alcohol. Maybe this time, you actually listen to the voice you know you should be listening to and take some responsibility over this God-given process we call life. I hope that wasn't too, poetic in a bad way. All right. Cool. Get out the vote, y'all.